Sometimes you just have to admit what you did was garbage, because this is way better. Another day, another Cummins swap Ford video. This one, we got to do a front suspension, we got to do steering, we got to do, I don't know, four-wheel drive shifter, bed mounts. There's a whole bunch, all fab work. But we're going to start with the front suspension, so let's get to that. All right, so under the front of this thing, I've got the Dana 60 from the 98 Ram 3500. And we're just going to kind of use the suspension as is. So we're using the track bar from the frame, which is a 2012. So 2012 track bar, steering linkage, everything, steering gear, all that stuff. But in the back, so we're going to use the coils and the shock mounts that are from the frame. But, so I showed you guys way back when, we're not using the 4-link in the front of these. I hate that 4-link. So we're going to get rid of this. You can see I've just kind of welded that up. We're going to go to a track bar setup. And actually, this truck, when it had the Hemi in it, had a track bar setup on it. So we're just going to reuse it. So these are, or not a track bar, radius arm setup, sorry. So these are the radius arms I had built for it. All I did was clean them up so I can paint them, because I never painted them, so they kind of looked like garbage. But, so here's one, here's the other. So these actually, I run these narrowed up bushings up here that I built these, ways back when. You can go look up the video. When I originally swapped this thing to four-wheel drive. So I'm going to reuse these. These will bolt in. This is my caster adjustment right here. So we need to get the brackets underneath and see where they're going to clear. And we'll start working on that. But we're going to get a working front suspension under it. I really like this setup. Works really well. Adds a bunch of roll stiffness so you don't have to run as sway bar in the front. Kind of hurts articulation a little bit. But for what I want, these are perfect. And they ride phenomenal. That 4-link is... I mean, I'll give them credit. They were trying. It wasn't bad for the time, but there's better stuff out there. So I've got some brackets. Let's start mocking these up underneath. Okay, so I got it in here, and it's actually going to work. That is, as you can see, about 3.4 degrees of caster. We've got the axle about centered where we want it. And that'll work. And they tuck in, which I do need because of tire clearance. But it puts me inside the frame rail because this frame is also wider. So I actually kind of like that. I think that'll work, but I'm going to need to order these little outrigger brackets that I put in the back. I think I'm going to need them up here, and I'm going to have to run them on the inside of the frame there. So kind of stuck here until I can get those. So I guess while we have this side off, it's time to move on to the steering. We can figure that out, but this will work. It's just, yeah, got to order more parts. Okay, so I know this is really hard to see here, but this one up here, that's the new shaft I just shoved in. The bottom, you can see the column. And you can see this new shaft is running right across the top of my motor mount down there. So one, I do have to cut that motor mount and lay it back. But it's pretty close to being on the steering gear down there, but obviously it's shooting high. So what I'm going to do to try to make that clearance better, because the Hemi in here, it was always laying on the exhaust manifold and it just sucked. The steering was terrible. So what I did up here is I cut the bottom of that column off, put a bearing in, and I shortened the shaft. I'm going to do it again. I'm just going to move it up as high as I can. And as soon as it's up there, I'll move it up as high as I can. And I'll put the bearing back in, and then we'll try to fit this again. So now I'm going to pull the column out so we can modify it. All right, there's so much column I cut out. You can see the housing here, and then this was the shaft I had on there. So that is quite a bit shorter. So moving this up in the truck will just raise everything up and give me more clearance. And I was running a spring in here to kind of preload everything, but it kind of sucked. The steering was not great. So I went solid here. There is still a spring up here underneath the wheel. So that should keep everything preloaded tight. But the other reason I had to use that spring is I didn't have any kind of collapsible U-joint or collapsible shaft. As U-joints go around, they get slightly longer and shorter, just the way this moves. Kind of pushes up and down, so you need a slip somewhere. So I was using the spring. That's gone. We're putting a slip shaft in. So let me get this mounted back up in the truck, and then we will go, I'll go show you the slip shaft, but this should really improve the steering because it was awful. All right, you can see that thing is way, way shorter. So that fits in really nice. And then what I've got here is, this is a collapsible steering shaft from Jegs. It's just a generic one. So I had to cut the end off and put the double D in here. So that'll slip in the bottom of the column. And then this little stubby black end U-joint is actually the one that goes to the steering gear for the factory Dodge steering gear. So we're gonna shove this in there and see if it fits. I'm guessing I'm gonna have to shorten this because I bought a 3-foot one because I knew I needed a long one. So right now it's fully collapsed, but this joint right here will let everything move. So this thing should have nice steering. Let's see how it fits up in there. Okay, I know this is gonna be really hard to see, but right there we're connected, and then it comes up and you can see it down there. Like way down there is the steering gear. And it comes up, and if it'll focus, there we go. You can see I had to take the corner of the motor mount out. Not a big deal. I need to plate that anyway. And then behind it, right there, you can see where I folded it back. That'll get welded, so I'll plate the front, I'll weld that, and then it comes up through and drops right in here. So that's a pretty straight U-joint angle. Down there, that one's really straight. I've got plenty of clearance everywhere. Finally, this thing is gonna have not sketchy steering. Like it, I mean, you can kind of see through there. I've got a decent amount of room. So I'll lay that over, clearance that all out because that back piece will get laid down. So hell yeah, steering is mocked up. That'll work. Again, we're just get it through, get it tacked up, weld it later when we know everything's good. Well, it's been, I don't know, like 2 weeks or something since I figured out I needed those outriggers. So right now I've got it dialed up. I've got my axle where it needs to be. I've got 3.4 degrees of caster, which is probably one about 3 when this thing is all said and done. I mean, that'd be a good starting point. But the front of this is still a little high. Like I want the whole truck to come down, which will give me a little bit more caster, but I have the adjustment here. But when I got all this laid out, it's tacked in right now. And oh yeah, I did get these painted because I had some time, cleaned them up and painted them, is I had to lengthen this upper. And if you look here, that is, there's not much engagement here. So I just ordered longer heim joints for here with extended shafts. So that'll take care of that. That works back here. And you can see, if we come underneath, I put that outrigger bracket. It's kind of dark, but you can see the outrigger bracket up there. And then I did trim up this bracket. I took 2 inches off the back of it because it was into the trans cross member, and I didn't want it that tight, which this thing will be plenty fine, even shorten up 2 inches. So this side's all tacked in. I'm really happy with it. It tucks in really nice to the frame rail. So it's about as tight as it can be. I've still got a whole bunch of trimming up here to do, but this looks really good. Now all of this just needs to get mirrored to that side. And this took a long time, so I'm just gonna go do that. Okay, so moving on to the rear, you can see I've got paint on this thing. I'm using a paint called Stainless Blast by Seymour. It's supposed to be really durable and easy to spray, and it's looking amazing so far. So I've got everything kind of together assembled for the final time. You can see my little stands I built for the bed rails that weren't gonna hit the frame, so I've got 4 of those in. I got the rear axle cleaned up and painted. I even put the shocks in the parts washer so they look brand new. Like, this thing's turning out sweet. But the reason we're back here is this leveling valve or height control valve, whatever you want to call it. So this is, let me come around to the front. You can see it, it's a little Haldex valve. And basically this arm attaches to the rear axle. Right now I've got a Sawzall blade on there because I wasn't sure if this was going to work. because it goes up and down, and I wanted to make sure it wasn't going to go up and hit the bottom of the bed or hit anything, but it actually fits in there. It's kind of hard to tell with all this stuff. Pretty nice. So that'll get a little adjustable rod so I can adjust the ride height. So when this just levels everything up, and what I'll do is I got some valves I'm going to put in for to dump and to go over height. But yeah, this works great. I just tacked in a little bracket I had laying around. That mounts there. It goes right down. So this is vent. So if it's too high, like you have a bunch of weight in the back and then you take it out, the truck will go up. This will vent. This middle one goes to both bags, so they're tied together. And then this bottom one just goes to pressure right now. I just have it hooked up to the air compressor, but I've cycled it. It goes up and down. And once I get an adjustable rod in there instead of a Sawzall blade, I'll be able to adjust my ride height to wherever I want. This works really, really well. I am super happy with this. It's back here. It's out of the way. It's not taking up any room. I tried to go as close to the center of the truck as possible so articulation doesn't have an effect on it. And that's about as close as I could get. I'm not really worried about damage because remember the fuel tank is like basically right here. So it's protected by the fuel tank and the spare tire. I think it's going to work really, really nice. All right, let me show you how this thing works because it's got some pretty cool features in here. So when it's level, so I have it not connected to the axle. When it's level, nothing happens. So I've got air going into it now. So if you go up, which would be the truck going down, it has a delay. So it's not doing anything. There it goes. So what that delay is for is so when you're going down the road and this thing's just kind of bouncing and you're moving, it's not constantly adding and removing air. You know, and it just kind of sucks down your tank. Same thing on down. But it automatically adjusts and it has that little bit of deadband and time delay in it. So it has that time delay so it doesn't just bleed your air system dry constantly, which is really, really cool. Because you can see it's got a pretty good delay. So when you actually see load changes, it'll adjust. There it goes. But it won't adjust everything going down the road. And I don't have to sit there and put air in my bags. I don't have to adjust my pressure. This thing will always achieve the right ride height, whatever I want it to be. Okay, so in preparation for the hitch and the bumper, I gotta get the bed mounted because that kind of sets everything. So I bought a bed bolt kit. I think this is for a Super Duty, and it comes with this really nice setup, but the Super Duties unfortunately run a C-channel frame, so they have just an open flat that you can clip this on. I don't have that because this thing does not have an open C-channel frame. So I got all my holes drilled up here, and you can see what I did was I cut this bracket off kind of right at the 90 and just tacked it up in there. So this still can float. Should make bolting the bed down easy. So I've got 2 up here on the front, 2 here. So those are original. These I had to add to the bed because it didn't have mounts here. It had them on the first one, the third one, the fourth one, and then all the way in the back. So I'm not using the middle 2 because I don't actually have cross members here, but I did add some on the back. So I'll have 6 bolts holding the bed down. Should be plenty, and I've got it supported everywhere. So now drop the bed down and bolt it on, and we can figure out where the bumper goes, which sets where the hitch goes, and yeah. So I got some bolts up in the bed, so the bed's bolted down, and that brought me to the bumper. And the way the 37 sticks out, I test fit the bumper and it didn't quite fit. So I had to notch out the bumper here. So that's the bottom side. You can see it has that bolt-on hitch. And all it was 2 plates of steel bolted together. It's like an inch and an eighth or so. But they had actually like spread out in the middle. Man, that was a pain to cut. It took me 3 cuts, 1 for each piece of metal with the plasma. But that notched it out. This bumper is purely cosmetic. It's just gonna be for looks. That's a 20,000 pound rated 2.5 inch receiver. If I ever pull or do anything, that's what I'm gonna use. So I don't feel bad cutting this, but I did leave this on here just because I like the way it looks. It's always been on this truck. It's always been on this bumper. So I wanted to keep that little ball mount, but I did trim it out so I can tuck it up tight to the 37. So let's see if we can get this thing to fit a little bit better right now. Just slung that bumper up on there and it looks really, really good. So right now it'll tuck all the way up till it touches. Right now I've got about a 1/2 inch spacer because I think that's about where it was stock. It tucks just underneath. This is pretty much the same height. It might be a tick lower, which I can move it up. So it fits really, really nice. If you look underneath, you can see it hides about half of the spare. So yeah, look at that. It hides about half the spare. So once the hitch is under there, it's gonna look really, really good. Really happy with the way this is turning out. Now, for the crappy part about this, and it's kind of hard to tell here, but if I go under here maybe, so you can see the bracket is kind of at the inside of the frame rail. It's not tight, but that's how much wider this frame is. So those brackets mounted on the outside of the factory Ford frame rail, these don't even reach the inside. That's how much wider, which that's a lot more rigidity and stiffness in this frame, but it means I got to rework these. And I'm not sure how I want to do it because I really don't want to alter the look of this bumper. So I don't know. I need to figure it out. I might just bolt them to the inside with some spacers. Because like I said, this thing's pretty much cosmetic. It's never going to tow. It's going to have big old hitch on it. So it's just going to be a step and look cool. So, or I could move these out to the outside, or I could flip sides and try to make them on the inside, but I don't want to have a bunch of extra holes. So I'm gonna ponder on it. We'll come up with a plan. Bumper is all mounted up. It turned out really nice. And I didn't modify the bumper at all. So it's all the same, which is nice because I didn't want to lose the patina on here. So what I ended up doing down here, see if you can see it. So I've got a through bolt there that actually picks up one of the factory bolt holes. Bolt's not quite long enough. I got to get a longer bolt, so that one's not tight. And then up top, what I did is that's actually a riv nut into the frame. And it's hard to tell. But what I did was I put a factory, actually a hitch spacer. They come with those like square 1/4 inch thick spacers. So that fit perfectly. So that thing is solid. Like I said, it's purely just for looks. I guess if I get rear-ended, it does matter, but I'm never going to tow off that. What I have, and this is the next thing we got to mount, is this gigantic 20,000 pound 2.5 inch hitch. So this is a Kurt weld-on universal hitch. These end plates are actually rotated 90 degrees because they're meant to go straight up and kind of come up the frame. I don't have enough room for that because my frame ends way up here and I need to come way back to here. So I flipped them so they're sideways like this. And with this, the way it's going to have to happen is I need to weld them to the bottom of the frame. So that flange is going to get welded to the bottom of the frame, which is not really the way they designed this. So I'm kind of worried about getting enough weld on and being strong enough. So what I did was I went to Barnes 4-wheel drive and got these frame ties. So what I'll do is put that flat from the side of the frame kind of down right onto it like that. Actually, I'll probably just go like this to help tie it together. And then in case there's any kind of like side load, I got a whole bunch of gussets and stuff. I just kind of ordered stuff. I've actually been using these as gussets. I just cut off the radius so it's flat and it makes a really nice gusset. I'll probably use these. So that'll brace the crap out of that. And you're probably wondering, why 20,000 pounds? Why 2.5 inches? And there's two reasons. One, my other truck is a 2.5 inch hitch, which means I can just switch my hitches. I don't like to run the adapters. I just like to run a full 2.5, so that'll make it easier. And the second is we want to get a big truck bed camper, or not big, just a truck bed camper. And some of them actually, you take the tailgate off and they come over and they like overhang a little bit. And if we do that, I'll have to run a hitch extension to get the hitch back behind it. And if I'm going to do that, I'd really rather have it be 2.5 than 2 inch. This thing will never see a 20,000 pound bumper pull trailer. I just don't like pulling a trailer that big on a bumper pull. The most it'll ever see is probably 12 or 14, like a dump trailer or anything like that. So this thing is overkill, but why not? It's the right move. So I need to, which I will say, I love Kurt products. Anything Hitch related, I won't buy anything but Kurt. It's the nicest stuff. But guys, what are you doing? You put this really nice coating on a weld-in hitch. Like this thing is primered and coated, and that stuff is hard to grind off. It's a weld-in hitch. What are you doing? I'm gonna have to paint it anyway. Fix that. Otherwise, great hitch. I love it. Let's get it mounted up under here. And one more thing, I already checked too, because my spare tire is like right here. I wanted to make sure that, because sometimes these are really short and the hitch will actually stick out the back. And the last thing I wanted to do was get this all welded in here, not be able to put a hitch in. This one is actually extra deep. So that's kind of nice. I don't have to worry about it. I can butt this right up against my spare tire, and I measured all my hitches. I'll have nothing that'll stick out back here. So let's get this thing fit up under here. Well, I think I made a miscalculation on this hitch. So I got it all tacked up. It is upside down right now, so keep that in mind. But I wanted to brace this thing up so I wouldn't lose any of its rigidity because I'm not mounting it the way it was designed. And I think I just turned a 20K hitch into probably a 30K hitch. So I have a gusset here, I have a gusset here, I have a gusset here, and the same on that side. So I don't know of any hitch that is running gussets like this. And then this will get welded to the bottom of the frame rail along here and on the inside. And then, as if that's not enough, these will overlap here to tie everything together. I've got 4 of these to hold this together. Really, I was trying to maintain rigidity, but whatever. I bought the stuff, I'm gonna do it. So let's get this thing fit up and we'll see, and then I'll mark, clean the frame, we'll tack it in. But it's pure beef. It's definitely overkill, but I feel better about overkill versus worrying about it. So let's get it mocked up, see what it looks like. Well, quick update. This looks like total crap. I hate it. Look how low that hangs. It just, no, this can't. I'm gonna redo all this because this is absolutely horrid. Like, let me zoom out. Like, it just, no. I can't, like, let me add some light there. That gap, this is terrible. I am gonna absolutely cut this thing up and fix it because this, God, this is horrible. God, I don't know what I was thinking. I'm gonna fix this. Well, I think I got it. I haven't test fit it. I think I got it where I want it, and I just cut the crap out of this thing. So you can see this is how much I moved it up. It's like 1.75 inches up to raise it. And with that, I made these little gussets. It's the same ones I had before. So they'll fit in, they'll tie the top, the bottom, and the back. A lot of good weld there. And then across the back, I added 2 more gussets here, going kind of in the 4F direction. And then I have these that tie up under there. So they'll weld up and then they stick out a little here, and that will actually, I'll be able to weld that to the frame. And then same thing over here. If this is good, what I'm gonna do is basically run that cut all the way back flush because it's not really doing anything. I thought about filling in underneath here. Do I need it? Do I not need it? I can get 3/4 of the tube welded all the way around. And then with all these gussets I added, I'm adding a lot more weld area there. So I think this is gonna work. I'll be able to cut it flush and tuck it way up, but let's fit it. I'm happier with this, and I still think it's way, way overbuilt, but let's get it fit and see how it looks. Okay, that is a million times better. Look at that. So it is hitting the bottom of the bumper. I'll have to trim kind of on the top side there. So I'll probably just notch it just so the bumper can drop a little bit. But look at that. It's above the bottom of the tire, which I like. It's tucked up nice and tight. Once I cut that flat all the way across the side, let me get back here. Like, that'll look really good. So I'll just cut it flush across. Yeah, that's where a hitch should sit, and I'm really, really happy with that. That's gonna turn out really, really nice. Hell yeah. I'm glad I redid that. I'm much, much, much happier with this. This looks awesome. That thing's got a 37-inch spare tire underneath the back and a 2.5-inch hitch. And it doesn't look ridiculous. So, hell yeah. Let me get that trimmed up and we'll see what it looks like. Sometimes you just have to admit what you did was garbage, because this is way better. Look at that. So this is the second try, all tacked up in there. It looks, all the little braces. The hitch is fully welded itself, but so if you look up here, I trimmed it up. It's nice and flush. So that joint will get welded. It's not welded right now, and I just tacked those plates on just for illustration. But that's how they'll get tacked across there. And then on the bottom side, that whole flange will get welded on the inside. And if you look at that, that's about even with the bottom of the spare tire. I mean, it literally touches the spare tire there. It fits freaking perfect. Look at it. Look at that. Even with the bumper across, this is amazing. This turned out perfect. I'm so glad I scrapped that first attempt, because this is exactly what it should look like and what I had in my mind. So I'm really happy. I think that hitch will still pull 20K. No problems. Do I need to pull 20K? No, but I could if I wanted to. So hell yeah. That looks like a real truck again. All right, guys, that was a lot of random progress again. Because yeah, I'm just working on it when I can. Honestly, it is December 22nd today. It's 20 degrees outside. This is North Carolina. Come on. And honestly, this 20 degrees is colder than Michigan was, because in Michigan, I had a fully insulated shop with a wood stove. Here, I have a noisy little propane heater that I have to turn off anytime I want to film, because you guys wouldn't hear anything otherwise. But it's coming. Bed's mounted, bumper's mounted, hitch is on, front suspension is good. I'm happy. It is really coming. Oh, the leveling valve's in there. Like I said, a bunch of random crap. But we're making progress. I don't know what we're going to do in the next video. I still got to plumb up the rear suspension with all my solenoids, everything for the active control I'm going to do. We still got to weld up the whole front suspension. The whole front of the truck needs to be welded. Yeah, I don't know. We'll do something. But the 67 Cummins, it's coming along, and man, we're getting close. We're getting really close.